My parents gave my $120,000 college fund to my brother's drug habit, then asked me to pay for rehab. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update on this story. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Stay tuned for more. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other. The thick envelope from her dream university sat on the kitchen counter, practically glowing with promise. She'd worked 4 years for this moment. Honor roll, volunteer work, part-time jobs that left her exhausted but determined. Her fingers trembled as she tore open the seal, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Full acceptance with merit consideration," she whispered, reading the words twice to make sure they were real. At 18, Julia Williams had never felt more proud of herself. The scholarship would cover 30%, but she'd always known about the college fund her grandmother had started when she was born. Her parents had mentioned it countless times. $120,000 carefully saved and invested over the years. She bounded up the stairs, letter clutched in her hand, ready to share the news that would change everything. The sound of hushed, urgent voices from her parents' bedroom made her pause at the top of the landing. Her stepmother's voice was strained, almost desperate. "We can't let him go to prison, Marcus. He's your son." "I know that, Diana, but this is serious money we're talking about." Julia's excitement began to curdle into something cold and sharp. She crept closer to the door, her acceptance letter forgotten in her sweaty palm. The conversation that followed would shatter everything she thought she knew about her family and her future. "The college fund is the only way," Diana continued, her voice breaking. "It's just sitting there and Julia's smart, she'll figure something out. She always does." Julia's world tilted sideways. The college fund? Her college fund? She pressed her ear to the door, hardly daring to breathe. "Damien owes those people $40,000, her father said quietly. "And if we don't pay them back, they're threatening to." "I know what they're threatening," Diana cut him off. "But that's our daughter's future we're talking about." "She's not your daughter," came her stepmother's sharp reply. "And Damien is your flesh and blood. He made mistakes, but he's trying to get clean. This is his chance." Julia's legs felt like they might give out beneath her. Damien, her stepbrother who'd moved in 3 years ago when Diana married her father. The same Damien who'd been in and out of trouble since he was 15, who'd stolen money from her purse, who'd brought suspicious friends around at all hours. The money was supposed to be for her education, her father said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Education doesn't matter if her brother is dead," Diana replied coldly. "Besides, there are loans, community college, other options. But there's only one option to keep Damien alive." Julia stumbled backward, her acceptance letter falling to the floor. The dreams she'd carefully constructed over 4 years of hard work began crumbling around her like a house of cards. That evening, Julia sat at the dinner table, pushing food around her plate while her family acted like nothing had happened. Her father avoided her eyes, while Diana chatted about mundane things. The weather, a sale at her favorite store, anything but the conversation that had destroyed Julia's world that morning. Damien wasn't there, which wasn't unusual. He'd been disappearing for days at a time, coming home with hollow eyes and shaking hands. Now she understood why. "I got accepted to Hampton University," Julia announced suddenly, her voice cutting through Diana's chatter about grocery prices. Her father's fork clattered against his plate. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." "The tuition is $60,000 a year," she continued, watching their faces carefully. "But I figured the college fund would cover most of it." The silence that followed was deafening. Diana's face went pale, while her father looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Julia felt a bitter satisfaction at their discomfort, even as her heart shattered a little more. "About that," her father began, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's been a situation." "What kind of situation?" Julia asked, though she already knew. She wanted to hear them say it, wanted to watch them try to justify what they'd done. "Damien's in trouble," Diana said, jumping in before her husband could respond. "Serious trouble. And we had to use the college fund to help him." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Julia's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. "You what?" Julia's voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of calm that preceded a storm. "It's not what you think," her father said quickly, finally meeting her eyes. "It's a loan. We're going to pay it back. With what money? Julia demanded, her voice rising. You used my college fund, money that was specifically saved for my education, to bail out your drug-addicted stepson? He's not just my stepson, Diana snapped, her maternal instincts flaring. He's part of this family, and family looks out for each other. Family? Julia laughed bitterly. I've been part of this family for 3 years longer than he has. I've never asked for anything, never caused any trouble. I worked my ass off for 4 years to get into college, and you just gave away my future. The front door slammed and Damien walked in, looking worse than Julia had ever seen him. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and there were bruises on his face that hadn't been there a few days ago. What's all the shouting about? He asked, his words slightly slurred. Julia got into college, Diana said, her voice tight with tension. Damien's eyes found Julia's, and for a moment she saw something that might have been shame flicker across his face. But it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. That's great, he said, but his tone was flat, disinterested. Real great. The casual indifference in his voice was the final straw. Julia stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. You don't even care, Julia said, her voice shaking with rage. You don't care that they destroyed my future to save your worthless life. Hey, that's enough, her father said, but his heart wasn't in it. Is it? Julia turned on him. Is it enough? Because I haven't even started yet. Do you want to know what I heard this morning? Do you want to know what your wife really thinks of me? Diana's face went white. Julia, don't. She said I'm not her daughter. She said I'm not worth as much as her precious son. She said I could figure something out because I always do. Julia's voice was getting louder with each word. Well, guess what? I can't figure out how to make $120,000 appear out of thin air. It's not that simple, Diana said, but her voice lacked conviction. It is that simple, Julia shot back. You chose him over me. You chose his mistakes over my dreams. You chose his addiction over my education. Damien, who had been quiet during the exchange, suddenly spoke up. I didn't ask for this. No, you didn't ask for it, Julia agreed. But you took it anyway. You took everything I worked for and threw it away on whatever poison you're putting in your body. I'm getting clean, Damien said, but even he didn't sound convinced. With my college money, Julia replied. How's that working out for you? The tension in the room was suffocating. Her father looked like he was having a heart attack, while Diana's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. 3 weeks later, Julia was working double shifts at the local diner, trying to save every penny she could for college. The acceptance letter was pinned to her bedroom wall, a constant reminder of what she'd lost. She'd applied for every scholarship she could find, but the deadlines were tight and the competition was fierce. She was wiping down tables when her phone buzzed. A text from Diana. Need to talk. Come home after work. Julia's stomach clenched. Nothing good ever came from Diana's need to talk conversations. She finished her shift with a growing sense of dread, her mind racing through possible disasters. When she got home, she found her parents sitting at the kitchen table with paperwork spread between them. Diana looked like she'd been crying while her father's face was grim. What's wrong now? Julia asked, setting down her purse. Damien's in rehab, Diana said without preamble. He's been there for a week. Julia felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this meant they'd come to their senses. Maybe they'd realize that throwing money at Damien's problems wasn't the solution. That's good, she said carefully. Maybe he'll actually get clean this time. The program costs $50,000, her father said quietly. Insurance doesn't cover it. The hope died as quickly as it had come. Julia stared at them, waiting for the punchline that never came. You've got to be kidding me, she said finally. We know how this looks, Diana said quickly. But this is his chance. His real chance to get better. With what money? Julia demanded. You already spent everything on his debts. That's why we need to talk to you, her father said, his voice barely audible. We need your help. Julia's laugh was harsh and bitter. My help? I don't have any money. You made sure of that when you stole my college fund. We didn't steal it, Diana said sharply. We used it to save your stepbrother's life. Same difference, Julia shot back. And now you want more money that I don't have. You have that job at the diner, her father said. And you could get a loan or… Are you insane? Julia's voice cracked with disbelief. You want me to go into debt to pay for his rehab? After you already destroyed my future. It's not forever, Diana said desperately. Once he's clean, he'll get a job, he'll pay you back. Like he paid back the money he stole from my purse? Like he paid back the money he owes to dealers? Like he's ever paid back anything in his entire life. The room fell silent. Even Diana couldn't argue with that logic. I can't believe you're asking me this, Julia continued, her voice shaking. I can't believe you think I should sacrifice even more for him. He's family, Diana said, but the words sounded hollow even to her. No, Julia said firmly. He's not. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't choose addiction over education. Family doesn't ask an 18-year-old to go into debt to clean up a 22-year-old's mistakes. She turned to leave, but her father's voice stopped her. Julia, please. We wouldn't ask if there was any other way. Julia spent the next few days in a haze of anger and disbelief. She couldn't concentrate at work, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except the impossible situation her family had put her in. She was sitting in her car after another brutal shift when her phone rang. Julia? This is your Aunt Kesha. Her father's sister. They'd only met a few times, but Kesha had always been kind to her. What she said next changed everything. I heard about what happened with your college fund. Julia's stomach dropped. Dad told you. Diana called me, Kesha said, her voice tight with anger. She wanted to know if I could help pay for Damien's rehab. And? Julia asked, though she was afraid to hope. I told her exactly what I thought about parents who steal from their children to enable their stepchildren's addictions. Kesha's voice was sharp with disapproval. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I want to help you. I don't need charity, Julia said quickly. It's not charity. It's justice. Kesha paused. Your grandmother didn't just leave money for your college fund. She left instructions about what should happen if your father ever tried to misuse it. Julia's heart started beating faster. What kind of instructions? The kind that might surprise you. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's something you need to see. That night, Julia barely slept. She kept thinking about her grandmother, a woman who died when Julia was 12 but who'd always believed in her potential. What had she left behind? The next day, Julia met Kesha at a coffee shop downtown. Her aunt looked tired but determined, carrying a manila envelope that she placed on the table between them. Your grandmother was a smart woman, Kesha said without preamble. She knew your father's weaknesses and she was worried about what might happen if he remarried. What do you mean? She set up the college fund as a trust, Kesha explained, opening the envelope. Your father was the trustee, but there were conditions. Strict conditions about how the money could be used. Julia's hands trembled as she looked at the documents. Legal language she didn't understand, but one thing was clear. The money was specifically designated for her education and could not be used for any other purpose. He violated the trust, she whispered. He sure did, Kesha said grimly. And that means he can be held legally responsible for returning every penny. But the money's already gone, Julia said, her hope deflating. They used it to pay off Damien's debts. That's his problem, not yours, Kesha said firmly. According to these documents, he owes you $120,000 plus interest. And if he can't pay it back, the house can be sold to cover the debt. Julia stared at the papers, her mind racing. The house. The family home where she'd lived since she was 15, where her father had built his life with Diana. I can't take their house, she said. You're not taking anything, Kesha replied. You're reclaiming what was always yours. That evening, Julia walked into her house with the legal documents tucked under her arm. Her parents were in the living room looking defeated and exhausted. Diana had been crying again, while her father stared at the television without really seeing it. We need to talk, Julia said, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. They looked up at her and something in her expression made them both sit up straighter. I know about the trust, she said simply, placing the papers on the coffee table. Her father's face went ashen. Julia, let me explain. There's nothing to explain, she said calmly. You stole from me. You violated the terms of the trust my grandmother set up. You owe me $120,000 plus interest. We don't have that kind of money, Diana said, her voice barely a whisper. I know, Julia replied. That's why you're going to sell the house. The silence that followed was deafening. Her father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds, while Diana's face was a mask of shock and disbelief. You can't be serious, Diana said finally. I'm completely serious, Julia said. You made your choice when you gave my future to Damien. Now you get to live with the consequences. But we'll have nowhere to go, her father said, his voice breaking. You should have thought of that before you stole from your daughter, Julia replied. I'm going to college with or without your support. And thanks to grandmother's foresight, I'm going to do it with the money that was always meant to be mine. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and about Damien's rehab bill? That's not my problem. That's what happens when you choose addiction over family. As she walked upstairs to pack her things, Julia felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Her grandmother had protected her even from beyond the grave, and now she had the chance to build the future she'd always dreamed of. It wasn't the way she'd planned it, but sometimes the most important battles were the ones you never expected to fight.